The needle slipped past the vein on the first try. Renee felt it, that tiny pop of resistance that shouldn't be there, and had maybe 3 seconds to decide. Pull out and re-stick, or pretend she hadn't noticed and hope the backflow came anyway. She pulled out. Marcus Webb didn't flinch. His arm was already going numb. That was October 2023. Different hospital, different city, different version of herself who thought doing the right thing loudly mattered more than doing it carefully. She'd saved a man's life that day, got written up for insubordination the next, lost the job 2 weeks later. Not for the bad stick, not for being wrong, but for the particular way she'd been right when a senior physician had been wrong. Chicago was supposed to be different. New Mercy Hospital. 8 months in, 3 weeks, 2 days. She'd already mapped which doctors listened and which ones heard panic attack the second a black patient mentioned chest pain. Dr. Patterson was both. That was the problem. He stood at Marcus Webb's bedside now, reviewing the chart with the practiced speed of someone who had 11 more patients waiting and a shift that wouldn't end until dawn. The EKG printout dangled from his hand. Normal sinus rhythm. Clean. Marcus was 42, construction foreman, presenting with chest pressure and left arm heaviness. 3rd ER visit in 4 weeks. Patterson wrote something on the chart, closed it, turned to leave. Renee watched Marcus's face. Not afraid, exactly, just exhausted. The specific exhaustion that came from explaining the same pain 3 different ways to 3 different doctors and watching all of them arrive at 3 different diagnoses that all meant the same thing. You're imagining it. First visit, indigestion. Second visit, costochondritis. Now, if Patterson's expression was any indication, anxiety. She could already hear the script. Your vitals are stable. EKG looks good.
You've been under a lot of stress lately, right?
The mind is powerful. It can create very real physical sensations. Patterson pulled back the curtain. Marcus didn't call him back. Renee didn't either. She waited until Patterson disappeared around the corner, then pulled out her phone. Opened the photo she'd taken of Marcus's EKG while Patterson was logging into the computer. She'd been doing this for 8 months, photographing readings, keeping notes, building her own shadow chart for the patients who came back over and over with the same complaint everyone kept dismissing. The ST elevation was there, subtle. Leads 2 and 3, easy to miss if you were moving fast, skimming, trusting the machine's automated reading more than your own eyes. Impossible to miss if you'd watched your uncle die in a waiting room 17 years ago with that exact wave pattern on the screen. She put the phone away, looked at Marcus. His lips had taken on a grayish tint. His breathing was shallow. Textbook STEMI presentation, unfolding in real time, and Patterson had just walked past it. Or maybe he'd seen it and decided it wasn't significant. That was worse somehow. Missing something was human. Dismissing it was choice. Renee stepped out into the hallway. Patterson was at the nurse's station, laughing at something on Dr. Kim's phone. The moment felt obscene. Marcus Webb potentially dying 15 feet away while 2 doctors bonded over a meme. She'd done this dance 4 times in 8 months. Twice the attending had listened, ordered the test, saved the patient. Once they'd refused, and the patient coded in the parking lot 40 minutes later. Not her shift anymore, not her problem apparently, except it had carved itself into her sleep for weeks. Once she'd pushed hard, gotten the test approved, and been wrong. Just costochondritis, like they'd said. She'd apologized for a week. Patterson had never forgotten. The scorecard mattered.
When you were right, you were doing your job.
When you were wrong, you were that nurse, the one with the attitude problem, The hero complex, the inability to stay in her lane. Renee approached the station, kept her voice level, professional, empty of everything she actually felt. She requested a troponin test. Patterson looked up from the phone, blinked, asked her what she was basing that on. She listed the facts: 3 visits, 4 weeks, persistent symptoms, patient history of hypertension, family history of cardiac disease, current presentation consistent with… He cut her off, reminded her the EKG was normal, reminded her she wasn't a physician. Didn't say the rest out loud, but she heard it anyway. Remember the last time you did this. The costochondritis case. The one mistake in 4 correct calls. He'd been keeping score. She could have backed down. Should have. Patterson was already turning back to Dr. Kim. Conversation over. Decision made. Marcus would get discharge papers, a Xanax prescription, instructions to follow up with his PCP, and maybe 6 hours before his wife found him collapsed on the bathroom floor. Or Renee could push. Could invoke the protocol for second opinions on repeat presentations. Could go over Patterson's head, make herself that nurse again, burn whatever goodwill she'd rebuilt in 8 months. She'd been that nurse before, lost a job for it, survived anyway. She asked for Dr. Kim to review the chart. The air changed. Patterson's face went carefully blank, the expression of someone swallowing anger because witnesses were present. He stood up slowly, told her, fine, waste Kim's time, but when the test came back negative, they'd be having a conversation with HR about her pattern of undermining attending physicians. Then he walked away. Renee found Dr. Kim in the break room, explained the situation in clinical terms. No emotion, just facts. Watched Kim's expression shift from confusion to concern to something that looked like quiet rage.
Kim grabbed her coffee, didn't finish it, just set it down and headed for Marcus's bay.
The exam took 4 minutes. Kim was thorough, checked vitals again, palpated his chest, asked questions Patterson hadn't bothered with. Then she looked at the EKG. Her jaw tightened. She ordered the troponin test without a word. Renee drew the blood. Marcus watched her hands, steady despite everything, and said nothing. His lips were grayer now, his breathing shallower. 14 minutes. That's how long a troponin test took. Renee stayed at his bedside, checking his pressure every 3 minutes, watching the numbers climb. Kim stayed too, charting, but really just waiting. At minute 11, Marcus grabbed the bed rail. His knuckles went white. Pain spiked across his face, the kind you couldn't hide, couldn't breathe through. Kim called for the crash cart. At minute 14, the lab tech appeared with a printout. Kim's face went pale. Troponin, 3.2 nanograms per milliliter. Normal was under 0.04. Marcus Webb was dying, had been dying the whole time, was maybe minutes from coding. The next half hour blurred. Cardiology, cath lab. Patterson reappeared, suddenly efficient, barking orders like he'd been concerned all along. No one looked at Renee. She stayed in her corner, handed instruments when asked, monitored vitals, became invisible in the way good nurses learned to be when doctors needed to feel in control. They saved him. 2 stents, no arrest, clean procedure. Marcus's wife arrived during recovery, crying, thanking God, thanking Dr. Kim, thanking Dr. Patterson, who nodded solemnly and said they'd caught it just in time. Renee went to the break room, sat in the corner, stared at her hands. They were shaking now. They always shook after, never during. Kim found her 20 minutes later, sat down, said the words that should have mattered. "You saved his life." Renee didn't answer. Kim tried again. Said if Renee hadn't pushed, Marcus would be dead. Said she'd been right. Said she should be proud.
Renee finally looked up, asked what happened next. Already knew the answer. Patterson would file a complaint. HR would see a pattern. 4 interventions in 8 months. 1 incorrect. They'd call it a hero complex, an inability to trust her colleagues, a breakdown in team dynamics. Maybe she'd get a formal warning, maybe reassignment. Maybe she'd just wake up one day and realize she was exhausted down to her bones and couldn't do this anymore. Kim didn't argue, just sat there. The silence stretched. Renee heard herself say it out loud. We marched. We protested. We did the training sessions, the listening circles, the diversity initiatives, the pledges to do better. Kim nodded. And Marcus Webb still almost died because Patterson saw a black man with chest pain and decided it was anxiety before he even finished the exam. Yeah, Kim said quietly. So what was it all for? Kim had no answer. Neither did Renee. They just sat there. 2 women in scrubs, in a hospital in Chicago in 2026, in a country that had promised change and meant it, probably, but not enough. Not deep enough. Not in the 11-year-old reflexes of an overworked doctor who'd been trained to trust machines over instinct and move fast because people were dying in waiting rooms. Renee's shift ended at 7 a.m. She was peeling off her gloves when Patterson found her, told her they needed to talk. His voice was tired, not angry. That made it worse somehow. She told him not now. He said it wasn't optional. She told him to write her up. She'd sign whatever he wanted, but not now. She walked past him, out of the ER, across the parking lot, sat in her car for 20 minutes, hands on the steering wheel, engine off, going nowhere. Marcus Webb would leave the hospital in 5 days. He'd probably never know she'd fought for that blood test. Would remember Dr. Kim, maybe. Dr. Patterson, definitely. The hospital that saved his life. Renee would remember the 180/110 blood pressure. The grey lips. The 14 minutes. The tiny ST elevation Patterson had missed because he'd already decided what he was looking at. Next week, there'd be another Marcus, another Patterson, another impossible choice between staying quiet and staying employed. She started the car, drove home, went to bed, woke up 7 hours later and went back. Because quiet strength was the hardest kind to ignore, even when ignoring it was easier. Subscribe. This story isn't rare. It's Tuesday.